Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, Prabhupada. From Prabhupada to Lord 5 at every temple. Shri Shri Chaitanya ki jai. Paris, June 8th. 2,500 people in the audience as well as 50 devotees on stage awaited Srila Prabhupada's appearance at La Salle Pleyel in Paris. After Kirtan, Prabhupada began his lecture by having a devotee read in the Bible from the Gospel of St. John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. Prabhupada then spoke on the power of the holy name as transcendental sound. Many persons in the crowd were student radicals who specifically came to cause trouble, and Srila Prabhupada gave an analogy that agitated them, comparing the conditioned soul's existence in the pure world to a citizen's punishment for breaking the laws of the state. As soon as Prabhupada said that disobedient citizens would be punished, the students began to boo and yell. He was speaking in English, and his disciple Jyotirmai Devi Dasi was translating each line over the microphone. When the students began shouting, Prabhupada turned to Jyotirmai and asked, "What are they saying?" "They don't like the example you've given," she replied, "because they don't like the government here." Srila Prabhupada spoke back to the challengers, "You may not like it, but the fact of the matter is that if you break the law, you will be punished." He was speaking of the absolute law of karma, but the student radicals took it politically. They continued shouting at Prabhupada. One man jumped up and shouted loudly in French, "You may be speaking spiritual things, but one thing I would never do is sit on a throne and demand that people bow down to my feet." At these words, the audience began applauding and whistling and chanting the words, "Parterre, parterre, parterre." Prabhupada asked again for translation. Jyotirmai told him they were shouting, "Get down." Returning the challenge, Prabhupada spoke strongly into the microphone. "I could speak to you from the floor also, but that does not mean you would understand any better. If you know the science of God consciousness, then you can also sit on the Vyasasana and they will bow down at your feet." Prabhupada's strong reply brought silence to the hall, as if his answer had satisfied the challengers. Suddenly a man jumped up on the stage and addressed himself to the theatre audience. He began by speaking in defense of Prabhupada and the devotees, but then he began speaking against them. Finally, he began speaking incoherently, and Prabhupada turned to his disciples on stage and said, "All right, have kirtan." The devotees rose with drum and kartas and began arousing kirtan. Most of the people in attendance joined also, and protests were drowned out. After this tumultuous scene, while riding back to the temple, Prabhupada said that in the future they should not give him a vyasasana to sit on before public audiences, In the future, they should give him a simple cushion to sit on. He also doubted the value of explaining philosophy to such large audiences. For the balance of his stay in Paris, he spoke to smaller groups who were actually interested to hear him. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
lessons done.
Appeal de Shrimati Sita Thakurani.
Today's appearance of Srimati Sita Thakurani, the consort of Sri Advaita Acharya. At the time of Lord Chaitanya's birth, Sri Advaita Acharya was residing in Shantipur. Thus, Sita Devi, upon hearing the news that Sachimata gave birth to a son, visited the house of Jagannath Mishra, riding on a palanquin covered with cloth. She brought with her many auspicious articles like fresh grass, paddy, gorochan, turmeric, kumkum, and sandalwood. She also brought gifts of eatables, dresses, and other gifts. She blessed the newly born child by placing fresh grass and paddy on his head and saying, "May you be blessed with a long duration of life." But being afraid of ghosts and witches, she gave the child the name Nimai. Anybody know why that is? That's all it says.
I think the neem tree's got some properties that chases those beings away.
That's right. Neem tree is very bitter, and the aroma of it's very strong, and it keeps away bitters. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Written from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 16, the Lord's attempt to go to Vrindavan, text 188. Say Kahe More Yadi Kaila Angikara. Say Kahe More Yadi Kaila Angikara.
Say Kahe More Yadi Kaila Angikara.
Eka Agya Deha Seva Kari Ye Tomara. Eka Agya Deha Seva Kari Ye Tomara.
Eka Agya Deha Seva Kari Ye Tomara.
Say Kahe More Yadi Kaila Angi. So it's try again. Say Kahe More Yadi Kaila Angikara.
Say Kahe More Yadi Kaila Angikara.
Eka Agya Deha Seva Kari Ye Tomara.
Eka Agya Deha Seva Kari Ye Tomara.
Say Kahe More Yadi Kaila Angikara.
Say Kahe More Yadi Kaila Angikara.
Eka Agya Deha Seva Kari Ye Tomara.
Eka Agya Deha Seva Kari Ye Tomara.
Say Kahe More Yadi Kaila Angikara.
Say Kahe More Yadi Kaila Angikara.
Eka Agya Deha Seva Kari Ye Tomara.
Eka Agya Deha Seva Kari Ye Tomara.
Let's chant.
Say Kahe More Yadi Kaila Angikara. Eka Agya Deha Seva Kari Ye Tomara.
Say Kahe More Yadi Kaila Angikara.
Say Kahe More Yadi Kaila Angikara.
Eka Agya Deha Seva Kari Ye Tomara.
Eka Agya Deha Seva Kari Ye Tomara.
Sekahe Moreyadi Kala Angikara.
Sekahe Moreyadi Kaila Angikara.
Eka Agna Deha Seva Kariye Tamara.
Eka Agya Deha Seva Kariye Tomara.
And there's no one else to chant.
Sekahe Moreyadi Kaila Angikara. Eka Agya Deha Seva Kariye Tomara.
Sekahe Moreyadi Kaila Angikara.
Sekahe Moreyadi Kaila Angikara. Eka Agya Deha Seva Kariye Tomara.
Sekahe.
Sekahe.
The Muslim governor said,
The Muslim governor said,
More, me, Yadi, if Kaila, Angikara, you have accepted.
you have accepted.
Eka Agya,
Eka Agya,
one order.
one order.
Deha,
Deha,
give.
give.
Seva,
Seva,
service.
service.
Kari,
Kari,
I may remember.
I may remember.
Ye,
Ye,
so that.
that.
Tomara,
Tomara, you are.
Translation. The Muslim governor then said, since you have so kindly accepted me, please give me some orders so that I can render you some service. Please repeat. The Muslim governor then said,
The Muslim governor then said,
since you have so kindly accepted me,
since you have so kindly accepted me,
please give me some order
please give me some order
so that I can render you some service.
so that I can render you some service.
Sri Prabhupada's purport. If one is purified by following Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's orders, that is, by chanting the holy name of Krishna, one must certainly be eager to render service to the Lord. This is the test. When one engages enthusiastically in the Lord's service, it is understood that he is reaping the results of chanting the names of Krishna and Hari. Om Jnanatmarandasya Jnanjanasrakaya Charitamrita Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Kambarojivachlam Bhagavaya Devanya Kripatam Vande Shri Gurave Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The Muslim governor then said, since you have so kindly accepted me, please give me some orders so that I can render you some service. So previously he'd already asked him to chant the holy names, and that is the main instruction from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, he didn't leave volumes of books behind, simply he left the Shastakam, which begins with Cheto Darthanamarjanam, or Mahadavaikani Vapanam, Shrikaira Vachandra Kapitaram Vijavadajivnam, Anandam Vidivadnam Pratiptam Purnamita Swadnam Savatmasnapanam Param Vajayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sanktam, which cleansed the heart of all the dust accumulated for years. So this Sanktam movement is a prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon, increases the illusion of transcendental bliss, and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. So of the 8 verses that Lord Chaitanya gave, then he's encouraging everybody that simply do this and you'll be satisfied beyond your wildest dreams. If we get entangled in the material world, devotees, they make plans to leave this world. They don't make plans to stay in this world. The non-devotees, they make plans to stay in the world by their activities. And then, on the other hand, you have some people who are pseudo-spiritualists, who want to be seen as being spiritual, but their actions are something different. So just like when it comes to political voting system, then it's often, if there's not a big turnout, then it's considered, if there's not a big turnout of people to come to vote, it's considered that people are voting with their feet. In other words, they don't turn up, they don't find it's worth voting for anybody. So although they may not vote for someone, they're voting by not even showing up. So similarly, we vote by our actions. We vote for which destination we want to be. Do we want to come back to this material world, or do we want to leave this material world? So a devotee is always trying to understand what is best for our spiritual life. Is something going to be conducive for my spiritual life, or is something going to be detrimental? And we have to be careful to guard that Bhakti Lata Beach. It's a very, very difficult thing to obtain, and it's easy to lose if we're not careful. So whatever little faith we have, and whatever grasp we have in Krishna consciousness, we should be very vigilant to protect that. So the chanting of the holy name is asking for service, and the rendering of service enthusiastically is the symptom that our chanting is attentive, that our chanting is good. Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport here, when one engages enthusiastically in the Lord's service, it is to be understood that they are reaping the results of chanting the names of Krishna and Hari. So specifically mention these names because Krishna is all attractive. So when we become attracted to Krishna, we simultaneously lose the attraction for the material world. So we can still live within this material world and yet not be entangled in it, because everything we do is centered around Krishna consciousness. And the name Hari is also mentioned here because Krishna, he takes away all obstacles, all impediments. And when we begin to chant his name, then he's so pleased. It's mentioned that when the conditioned soul chants the holy name of the Lord, then the Lord is so pleased that he dances on the tongue of the conditioned soul. And in the previous verse, Lord Chaitanya has asked the Muslim governor to chant the holy names Krishna and Hari, and immediately the governor then said, "Since you've kindly accepted me," so by giving him the names, then practically Lord Chaitanya has initiated him into the chanting Harinam. Please give me some orders so that I can render you some service. So this is in line with Bhagavad Gita, Tadpadi Pranipatina Pare Krishna Sevya. Vipadekshanti te jnanam jnaninastat darshana. Just try to learn the truth by approaching the spiritual master, inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. Self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he's seen the truth. And so these things are there, that as soon as it's an eternal principle, so it's quite likely that the Muslim governor hadn't read Bhagavad Gita and understood that verse 434. Tadpadi Pranipatina, approach the spiritual master, render service, inquire submissively. But it's naturally within the soul, that knowledge is already there. So from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is revealing that knowledge, but also personally because he contacted, or because his Muslim governor contacted the Lord personally, then that knowledge is also there. Within the heart, the Lord gave him that knowledge. And automatically, then he asked for some service. As soon as he started chanting, then he asked for some service. So this Prabhupada says here in the end of the purport, this is the test. So yeah, if one is purified by following Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's orders, that is, by chanting the holy name of Krishna, one must certainly be eager to render service to the Lord. So if we don't feel enthusiastic to perform service, then it means our chanting is inattentive. We can't hide away and chant and avoid service. If we don't feel an attraction or a desire to render service, it means that our chanting is inattentive. So in order to make that chanting attentive, then we have to understand what are the 10 offences. These have to be avoided. Because even if materially we're chanting, apparently attentive, but we have some desire for, or we think the material name, the holy name is going to offer some material benediction, or that we can chant the holy name but we don't honour the spiritual master or the devotees, or we think the holy name of Krishna and the holy name of demigods are the same. So these are some of the offences. So we have to understand the proper position of the holy name and ourselves in relation to that. And this way, then we can chant humbly Trinadapi, Senechina, Tororapi, Sahasmana, Amani, Namana, Dena, Kirtis, Dahari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Satatam Kirtayantu Mam, always chant my name. So this is Krishna's direct instruction. And Lord Chaitanya, verse 3 from Shikshastika, is saying the same thing. And he's showing us how to chant the holy name constantly. So there's chanting the holy name in a humble state of mind. So how can we be humble? Anybody like to comment on that? Chanting the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street, these are connected.
Once, I remember who asked Radhana Swami how he became humble, and he said he practiced it.
Practice makes perfect. Sometimes that's true, sometimes they say fake it till you make it. So we may be acting humble, and inside we're cringing, thinking, oh, I don't like this. It's destroying my street credibility. We might be thinking like that. If one of my friends could see me now, bowing down in front of people, dressed in these funny clothes, then they think, wow, you'd be a total write-off. They think you're a lunatic. So let them think like that. Sometimes actually devotees purposefully go back to their hometown just to smash their own false ego. One devotee who was from a fairly small town, and he went back to his hometown as a bhakta, and he did a one-man Harinam there. He was basically cutting his connection with his past life by doing that. I know other devotees who also they didn't try to avoid going to their own hometown, they actually purposefully went there so they could also do the same thing, cut their ties with their previous friends, or sometimes to benefit them. So this is good, to cut our ties with the material world. And we make a lot of advancement, we become very strong, and we're basically saying to Krishna that I'm depending on you now. So practicing it, yeah. Something else, I think, Felix, did you have your hand up? Someone else about humility?
Yeah, I also feel we automatically become humble when we see the point that we depend on Krishna's mercy.
So that's a good point. In fact, Peter was saying that we automatically become humble when we realise that we're dependent on Krishna's mercy.
I suppose just being realistic about one's position and not assuming a false sense of a position or something that we're not.
So Felix was saying being realistic about one's position, and that's good, because sometimes we can believe our own press. Our false ego saying, oh, you're good, you're great, you're amazing, it's only going to take time before people realise how great you are. And maybe it'll take many births, and they still won't realise it because they're thinking the same. But on the other hand, we have to be balanced. We can't be all too much like, oh, you're just lower than a worm in stool, and things like that. Sometimes we have this false humility. So the false humility won't really stand the test, the true test. If someone comes to chastise you and you're being falsely humble, then you become very disturbed, or your false ego will become disturbed actually. But we see in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Advaita Acharya, he was feeling left out because Lord Chaitanya was chastising everybody except for him. Lord Chaitanya was instructing people, but because Advaita Acharya socially was higher, he was elder, then the custom would be that you don't instruct an elder, you never offer an argument to an elder. This is the Vedic custom, and still in India, an Indian background, and people will still behave like this, even if the elder is wrong or mistreating them, then they still show respect. It's built into them to do that. So Lord Chaitanya, he wouldn't chastise Advaita Acharya. So Advaita Acharya is thinking, well, Lord Chaitanya doesn't love me because he's correcting everybody, he's giving everybody shelter by correcting them, by guiding them, chastising them. But he wouldn't instruct me, so he purposely went out to preach some bogus philosophy, and then Lord Chaitanya was very angry with him and chastised him. And Advaita Acharya, who is ecstatic to receive this chastisement, he says that now I understand that Lord Chaitanya loves me. Of course, we cannot imitate. We shouldn't, after class, start doing some crazy thing just to see if someone's going to tell you off. But we can see the point here is that if one is humble, if one is advanced enough, then when direction comes, they think this is the Lord's mercy, so I can make advancement. Our false ego would just like everything to remain the same and nobody interferes with us. I know what I'm doing with myself, don't you worry, just leave me to myself. But that's why we're in the material world, because we followed our own devices. And because we're attached to the false ego, when someone gives us some direction, it's like it said in there's one compilation of Srila Prabhupada's teachings, it's called the Spiritual Master and Disciple. It says that the first duty of the spiritual master is to chastise the disciple. Now, it's not the only duty, and it's not that as soon as he sees him every morning, he's going to get chastised. It's not going to be like that. But this is taken from Bhagavad Gita, Sojanam Vasojastam Pragyabhyam Japash Segadas Nikatasam Chana Nishocham Tipandita. And while speaking 11 words, Arjuna, you're mourning for what is not worthy of grief. A wise person laments neither for the living nor for the dead. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that indirectly Lord Krishna was calling Arjuna a fool. You're speaking like as if you're compassionate, but you're speaking out of ignorance because you're totally on the bodily platform. And the wise person doesn't lament for the living nor for the dead because there is no such thing as death. He goes on to explain the nature of the soul. And so after speaking Bhagavad Gita, then Arjuna's temporary illusion had been dispelled, and he acted on Sanatana Dharma, or eternal spiritual principles. So this verse, Trinadapi Sanechana, Tavadapi Sasnana, one should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind. So the balance is, of course, we neither should we become too puffed up by glorifying ourselves, and neither should we become too introspective that we have no enthusiasm to do any service. We're just so caught up in our mind that we're destroying ourselves, because the test is if we're enthusiastically engaging in devotional service. So there has to be a balance, some introspection, and also some recognition that Krishna's given us some ability. If someone is good at something and someone gives you some praise, you don't say, oh no, I'm just a worm in stool. Then that's not recognizing that Krishna's given some ability. We can use our abilities and just accept, Krishna's given us ability. So Krishna's ability in everybody. Even in some species of animals, they have some amazing abilities which humans don't have. Someone can run very fast, or you have, so take a bear for example. If you ever meet a bear in the forest, you practically get no chance from it. They can run faster, they can climb better, they can swim better. So, unless you had, a weapon with you which you could shoot at a distance, then you can't really compare yourself to a bear. So there's so many species that can do things we can't do. And Krishna's given that ability according to their desire and according to the karma. So Krishna's also given us some ability, and we can use that in Krishna's service. Whatever we have, if we use it in Krishna's service, then that purifies us. And anyone can engage in devotional service, whether one is rich or poor, young, old, whatever condition we're in. If we have the desire to perform service, then there's nothing to stop us. even to the point where we see in the Nectar of Devotion, there's one poor Brahmin. He didn't have 2 paisa to rub together practically. He was very, very poor. So in his mind, he was offering manasa seva. He was offering service within his mind. So he was cooking for his deities. He was offering sweet rice, and in his mind, he was performing this manasa puja, manasa seva. And he was doing this every day, and the Lord was actually very pleased. So one day he was cooking sweet rice for the Lord in his mind. No, he couldn't afford actually sweet rice. He was very poor himself, very thin and emaciated. And so he cooked the sweet rice, and he went to check to see if it was cool enough to offer. He put his finger in and burnt his finger. So he awoke from his meditation, his finger was actually burnt. And at this time, in Vaikuntha, then Lord Narayan was laughing, and Lakshmi said to him, she's going to him, she said, why are you laughing? And he related the story of my devotee. He is nothing, but he's offering every day. And so the Lord had become so attracted by this devotee's sincere attempt to do service. So even if one is invalid, one can offer service within the mind. One can chant. So there's nothing to stop us engaging in enthusiastic devotional service except for ourselves. And Prabhupada says here that the chanting of the holy name, the test is if our chanting is good, then we'll be enthusiastic for service. And if it's not, then obviously the opposite. So this devotee had no facilities for offering service, but within his mind he was able to offer service. So if we're in a situation where we have no facility to offer service, perhaps we're at home, we're stuck down in the lockdown, or whatever it may be. For example, one time I was on an airplane to South Africa, 11 hours on the plane, and I had my deities with me, my Shalagram and my little deity Lord Chaitanya. And I had been doing regular puja for many years, every day. But I couldn't do the puja because of the situation and stuck in an airplane. So I did it in Manasa, and I had pictures of the deity. And then I decided to make some extra offerings. I was thinking of the example of this Brahmin from the Nectar of Devotion. And I was getting so absorbed in it that I practically forgot where I was. And when I opened my eyes again at the end of the puja, surprisingly I didn't fall asleep. But when I opened my eyes, then the atmosphere just seemed so much more different than before I started the puja. I felt so much purified, and also felt very sad that there were hundreds of people on this plane, and they had access to do the same thing. They've got a human form of life. They could be experiencing the same bliss, but unfortunately, they're just drinking alcohol, eating meat, falling asleep, and whatever their purpose is, it's just going to be accumulating more karma. So this is the nature. When the devotee experiences something nice, then he sees that other people are suffering because they don't have Krishna consciousness. So let me somehow or another try to get that Krishna consciousness to them. So we have to use this. If we're advancing in devotional service, then we'll automatically feel we want to give to others. And if we're not feeling like that, then we have to look at our practices and see where we're missing something. Because devotional service will infuse, association of devotees will inspire. Another example, one day I wasn't feeling very inspired. I just decided to go onto YouTube and watch some various lectures. So I spent practically the whole day just watching Prabhupada lectures, short ones. Satyananda Swami, Shivaram Swami, Radhana Swami. And within no time, I just couldn't contain my enthusiasm. So if we want to be enthusiastic, if we want to be inspired, then simply hearing, if we're hearing the mind, that won't inspire us. We really have to hear the transcendental sound vibration, otherwise we'll be hearing the mind. And the mind will keep us down, Mind will hold us back. But the very same mind will be our friend when it gets a taste for devotional service. Then that mind will be, oh, you remember that? That was great. Let's do that again. So the mind is only playing back what we put into it, and we put the mind in that situation by our desire. The mind is subordinate. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. These are comprising the gross and subtle material bodies, and they are subordinate to the soul. So it's actually simply Maya to think that we can't overcome the mind. This is Maya's trick. And the Maha Mantra is a means for overcoming the mind, the great deliverer of the mind. As Prabhupada said, it's so simple we could miss it. And sometimes we do it. Every day we could be missing it, but we keep trying, and we keep trying, and we'll get it. Satyananda Maharaj was saying that we have to keep on putting effort into our chanting, into our service, into trying to improve our association with devotees. Keep putting effort in, and then sometime it will come naturally, and then the effort won't have to be there. But sadhana bhakti means we have to put in effort. We should never think that we've arrived somewhere and now don't have to put in effort. That is folly that can lead to disaster on the spiritual level. So therefore it's important that we keep informed with Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. Whatever we're doing, it has to be in line with Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. Otherwise we run the risk of following our mind. And if we allow the mind to take charge, then in Bhagavad Gita we see this picture depicting the five senses on the horses and the reins, etc., and the chariot. So this analogy is showing that the spirit soul is bewildered. It's actually very fearful because the chariot is out of control. You just imagine you're on a chariot with five very strong horses, and they're all going in different directions, and you've lost the reins. You can't control them. So this means like losing your intelligence. So we have to continue to endeavour every day. And Arjuna said it's more difficult to control the mind than controlling the wind, and that's a fact. The yogis, they can actually attain some mystic powers where they can control material elements, etc. And that's easier than actually controlling the mind, because these elements are lesser, they're inferior to the mind. The mind's, that's why it says earth, water, fire, air, ether. These are going from the most gross to the most subtle: mind, intelligence, false ego. So of course the most subtle of the material elements is false ego, and that simply means that we misidentify ourselves to be something other than what we really are. And so therefore if we remind ourselves that I'm a devotee of Krishna, I've forgotten. But this process of Krishna consciousness is to remind me, and not just a mental reminder. It's like, okay, I've set my alarm to remind me in 1 hour that I'm a devotee of Krishna. Then it comes up on your alarm. You're a devotee of Krishna. Okay, great, thanks. Want something else? The remind means actually reviving our original consciousness. And the Guru, the Sadhus and the Shastra are there to keep on reminding us. And we all need that reminding because the material world is a place of forgetfulness. It's designed in such a way as that we can forget Krishna. Interesting story. There's one devotee, he left the movement. Back in the early days, it was 99% of the devotees who were in the movement lived in the temple. So if you left the temple, it was basically considered that you left the movement. So in those days, that's pretty much how it was. So he left the temple and he was trying to enjoy it. He went back to his hometown. He was trying to enjoy it, but he couldn't because he kept on remembering Krishna. So he was praying to Krishna, please let me forget you so I can enjoy. But by such praying to Krishna, he was remembering more and more. And of course, he came back to the temple. So Krishna, we might try to forget Krishna, but Krishna loves the living entity so much that he won't let him forget. Of course, if we really want to cover ourselves with ignorance and simple activity, karmic reactions, then temporarily we may lose our consciousness like we have done before. But whatever advancement we make, Krishna would forget. It doesn't mean to say we won't suffer for the karmic reactions, but the spiritual advancement we make is there. So this is why we should also not liken devotion and service or the chanting of the holy name to some material activity. If we do some good karma, in due course of time the result will come, and then once the result is spent, it's gone, you have to do some more good karma and get it again. But when you do something for Krishna, he never forgets. He's always looking for a way where he can, for the living entity, just like this also explained in the Shastra, that the Lord is seated within the heart of the living entity, and he's simply the witness. He's waiting for us to turn back to him. And as soon as we are interested in turning back to him, then he makes so many arrangements where we can take steps toward him again. So that's why it says if we take one step toward Krishna, he'll take 10 toward us. We may not see those steps, but if you look back in your life, you can see so many things were there which actually led you to become a devotee, which led us to where we are now. So whether they appear to be good or bad or whatever, then they were experiences which brought us to the conclusion that being a devotee of Krishna is the path to follow. So this chanting of the holy name in a humble state of mind, feeling oneself lower than the straw on the street. So sometimes if we get a bit proud, then we just have to think back of some of the things we did before, which we wouldn't be so proud of. One devotee, he once mentioned, he said that in japa, if someone was able to project your mind onto the wall during japa, he said everybody would be a lot more attentive during their japa. Because when we're chanting, we're not always just thinking all the time. Sometimes things come into the mind and we go with it, and then we realize, oh, I've just been following the mind again. But Krishna is kind, he doesn't embarrass us like that, but he's given us the free will. So the free will to be humble and to remember where we came from, and it's by the mercy of Guru, by the mercy of the devotees, and by the direction of the Shastra that we've advanced in spiritual life. Without that, then we would be simply in ignorance. So Srila Prabhupada said that we should chant for initiated devotees, then they have to chant at least 16 rounds on the beads. So when he gave this instruction, he said that devotees should chant minimum 16 on the beads and unlimited off the beads. So it's not simply that we allocate a certain amount of time for chanting, and then the rest of the day, that's it. We just let the mind wander, and then until tomorrow morning, for another 2 hours, we'll battle with the mind again. But actually, the more we chant, the more the mind becomes our friend. So we can chant all the time, we can chant within our mind, we can chant as we're doing service. But of course, we shouldn't try to. The interesting thing is that when you try to enjoy spiritual life, or you try to enjoy the spiritual master, then actually you lose the mood of service. So while we're serving and we start chanting, we shouldn't stop doing our service because we're chanting. Our Prana said that we should just chant all day. So I've tried to do my service, but I can't do both. I can't play the temple floor because I've got to chant. Now we can chant and work at the same time. We can do service and chant. And sometimes Prabhupada would give the instruction that one should not try to enjoy the spiritual master. Sometimes being in the presence of a great soul like the spiritual master, we feel all our troubles just disappear. We think, I don't actually even have any trouble. And then you walk out the room and we all come back in again. And then we read the other day that one devotee said to Prabhupada that I just want to be eternally sat at your lotus feet. And Srila Prabhupada says that would be difficult because my feet are always moving. So Prabhupada could see where he was at. Don't think you can just sit here and enjoy the spiritual master's company. I'm always moving, I'm doing something, I've got a mission. So if you want to be situated at my lotus feet, then you have to be moving also. You also have to be doing something. So we have to not let our sentiments override our intelligence. And intelligence doesn't mean to say we have to have a big brain or a PhD or something like that. It simply means that we have to know how to choose between what is favourable for devotional service and what is detrimental, what is going to help us advance. And what we should avoid for the detriment of our spiritual life. So this Muslim governor, he is so fortunate that he got the holy name directly from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is none other than Krishna. And as soon as he's been given the holy name, immediately he's asking, please give me some service. So this is, as Prabhupada says, the test. If we're enthusiastic for service, that means our chanting is good. One time I was cooking, so I was generally the service was Sankirtan, and then I had to cover someone in the kitchen one day, and then I got put in a few days in a row. I was finding it a bit difficult because I had to cook in the morning and then go in Sankirtan and somehow fit my rounds in. And I was managing, but my mind was complaining. So I said to this devotee who would give me the service, I thought they were actually punishing me by making me doing so much. And he says, no, this is Krishna reciprocating because you've been chanting. Krishna's pleased with your chanting, so you're getting more service. So when it was explained in that way to me, then I became more enthusiastic. So it's just a matter of sometimes the very thing we're doing doesn't change, but our outlook on it, our perspective on it can change when we see it through spiritual vision. It's called Shastra Chakshu, seeing through the eye of Shastra. So the only thing which is standing between us and Krishna and being enthusiastic to engage in devotional service is our mind, our false ego, still trying to convince us that we have some business in this material world, that we have some place to belong to in this material world. Because we identify with the material world, we have done for so long, then it's easier to give into that identification. But the more we try to put our mind into Krishna's service, and the more we put our mind into hearing, chanting, and just trying to engage the mind, Satatam Kirtanam, always hearing the Lord's name, Madmanabhava Madbhakto, always think of me and become my devotee. The more we do this, then the more we will identify with the spiritual world as our home and see the material world as a place which is actually very uncomfortable for the spirit soul. Okay, so we'll stop there. Any questions or comments?
This was, when you were speaking about always remembering Krishna, we just reminded this funny thing that one hippie did after he visited Prabhupada a few times, and he heard that you should always remember Krishna. So then he attached to his hat or something like a little thing that was hanging over his head, and he put a Krishna's picture in front of it. So whenever he was turning his head, the picture was going like this. But he carried on with his hippie life for the time being, but he did remember Krishna.
Still, that was fortunate for him anyway. Even that.
Good idea.
Even though it was quite foolish, he probably bumped into a few lampposts and things. But even though it was a kind of foolish version of trying to always remember Krishna, still it was an attempt. Krishna was there. He had some desire, so Krishna manifested in front of him as some kind of contraption with a picture in front of him. Anything else anyone have any other?
Sometimes I'm finding that when japa is going quite well, or even kirtan, the inspiration for service can come at that time. But then it becomes like a meditation, and I'm wondering whether that's a distraction from hearing the holy name, or whether it's considered an enrichment to the chanting.
Yeah, well, if you feel enthusiastic to do a service in the middle of a kirtan, then just do service by hearing and chanting the kirtan. So whatever you're supposed to be doing at that point in time, just do that. Because what it might mean is that then when you go to do some service, your mind should be saying, oh, you should go chant. And then you go to do that, and it'll be saying something else.
Yeah.
Just like when you're sitting at a feast, sometimes the mind just becomes so agitated. You're eating one thing and you're thinking of the next thing, and then you're eating that and you're thinking of something else. And while you're eating that, you're thinking, I wonder if there's enough of that left. I better get up before it runs out. All the while you're not actually eating. And eating prasadam is actually called respecting prasadam. It's a meditation. It's not just like some grub, some scran, nosh. Let's just wolf it down. If you remember it's Krishna, then we don't pick and choose so much. It's not like, oh, I don't take that, I don't take this. It's all prasadam. Sometimes we should make that, even if there's some things we're not so keen on, just to increase our respect for Krishna prasadam, then we should sometimes take that. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati used to mix all the maha together because devotees were picking and choosing. So in this way, if they wanted mahaprasadam, yeah, they can have mahaprasadam. If you want some sweet rice, it's in there with the dal. So we're not doing that to anybody. He's got the potency to carry out such instructions, such lessons. But we shouldn't just see, of course there's sense gratification there automatically, but we shouldn't treat it like that. We should think this is Krishna's mercy. Prasadam means mercy. And it comes in many forms, not just eatables. It can come in the form of the holy name, association of devotees, the service. But particularly because we're accustomed to gross sense gratification, then the only sense gratification we have in that regard is prasadam. And that is the thing which is sometimes they say that if all else fails, at least take prasad. If your mind's giving you a hard time and your japa is not much good and you're having trouble with a devotee, then just go and take prasadam, at least do that. Don't give up on that. And then you'll find, I've experienced that sometimes you may have some disagreement with another devotee. And then if you just go back to the original training, which Rupa Goswami gives us in the Nectar of Instruction, getting and receiving gifts, exchanging prasadam, etc. like that. And someone you may be had an argument with, if you just go and give them some prasadam, then immediately, or if they come and give you prasadam, immediately your mind just forgets the trouble that was between you. So we just have to simply keep on trying to practice this simple Krishna consciousness, and it works. It goes beyond all types of psychology. It goes beyond any type of material benefit which can be there. And it does work. We just have to be patient with it. Okay. Anything else?
I might be speculating, but I was just thinking when we were talking about how Krishna doesn't let his devotees forget him. When you're talking about this example of going back to the kind of left temple, and then he just couldn't stop thinking about Krishna. But then we also say that we have to take that step for Krishna to take a step back. But I was thinking, like, if Krishna isn't letting his devotees forget him, is it sometimes that Krishna is taking that step? You know, like in the sense that, yeah, we're saying that we have to take that step, but is it sometimes that way around?
And so Krishna says that my devotee never perishes. So at the same time, although Krishna won't forget his devotee, he doesn't interfere with the free will. And it also says that when a devotee suffers, if they go back into the material world, they suffer twice as much because they're suffering in knowledge. If someone is at the Prabhupada says that only two people can be happy in the material world, is one is the pure devotee and the other one is somebody who's in complete ignorance. They say ignorance is bliss, don't they? So, and Krishna he never lets his devotee perish. So it might not be even in this lifetime, but if we're so determined to forget Krishna and enjoy, then he may just let us go. And it may be next lifetime before we take up again. And that is also mentioned that for the unsuccessful yogi, then Suchinam Srimatam Gehi, that either he takes birth in a Suchi family, or a Brahmin family, or Srimatam, a wealthy family. He takes birth in a family where they don't have to worry about the very basics of life. That they're not spending. If someone is too poor and they're hungry, it's like some places in the world people are so much trying to spend their whole time of the day just getting some water or some food. So the devotee is not born in a situation like that because he's too absorbed, he's trying to survive. So he's born into a situation where they get an opportunity once again remember Krishna, and Krishna will give that opportunity. But what they do with it again is still their choice. So Krishna will never force, because it's out of love. But finally, when we use our free will, our minute independence is simply we can choose to follow the path towards Krishna or away from Krishna. And as soon as we take that opportunity, then Brahmanda Brahmati Koni Bhagavanji Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhaktilata Bij in Charitamrita it's mentioned that the living entities wandering throughout so many species of life throughout the universe, and then when they have some inquiry about who am I, what am I doing here, what's this all about, then Krishna makes some direction or some arrangement for that living entity to come toward them. And it may actually be over many lifetimes that the person comes. That's how verse that Manushanam Sahasrasu, that many persons endeavour for perfection, hardly one knows in truth. I don't know if that answers your question. If it doesn't, you can ask it again.
No.
Is that okay? Yeah, so there's two things involved. Krishna won't forget us, but also he gives us our independence to choose. He won't force us. Okay, let's finish it there. Let's go on to the key. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita key.
Jai.
The Prabhupada key.
Jai.
Time of praying.
Prabhupada